and welcome to Meet the Producers, a Brunswick podcast powered by Brunswick Area Television. I'm Ben Staunton, and sitting next to me is a guy who can tout that he was the last graduating class of the 6th grade here in Brunswick. When he was in elementary school, that was the last year before it went on to being in the middle school. It's Tom Kepler.
That's right. You pulled that one deep from the archive. I don't know why that matters to anybody, but I do brag about that because when I talk about, being 6th grade in elementary school, the kids nowadays look at me funny. I wasn't in a kidder elementary, for example. I said, I haven't been in this school since I was in the band here. We don't do bad until middle school. They're like, how does this work? What are you talking about, old man?
Well, I think both of us being Brunswickians, Brunswickiites, longtime people who lived here in Brunswick. How's that? And both, graduating from Brunswick High School. But I just thought that was a great tidbit of information you gave me not too long ago, and I thought that I'd bring that up so everybody knew. I graduated out of elementary school well before that change happened. So I just, we'll just leave it there.
They'd had enough by then. So
yeah, they
changed it when I was there.
Why don't you go ahead and tell us who we're talking to today?
Yeah, so you mentioned we never left Brunswick because we know a good thing when we see it. You guys should check out the Paltrocast or listen to it. I assume he has an audio version as well. So today we're going out of state and we're meeting Darren Paltrowitz. Darren, how are you today?
Great. Thank you for having me. A pleasure to be with somebody who's in that last graduating class.
It's an honor. So, Darren, why don't you tell us about the Paltrocast for people who haven't seen it?
So Paltrocast started off as an audio-only kind of podcast in 2018. And then in the midst of COVID, pretty much all the talk shows were Zoom calls. When you'd watch The Tonight Show or Jimmy Kimmel, it was really literally a Zoom call with a couple extra cutaways. And I kind of realized most of my interviews were video-based. And it's not like I wasn't doing anything more than a Zoom call. So I started video formatting that, picking up some stations. Your wonderful station has been showing my program for a while. And I think we're now on 150 plus stations and OTT carriers. Plus we do that audio version still.
Wow. Yeah, we're happy to have you because it's definitely an interesting show. You focus on celebrities or just people of interest, and you have them on your show, interview them. And these are big-time actors. These are big-time people. So I have some questions about that. Like, how do you come across these names, these guests on your show?
So I started doing all this. I was not in the last graduating class of my school, but I started doing all that when I was in high school, writing for this local newspaper here on Long Island and doing interviews. And basically, if you don't quit when you're at a newspaper or website, you just keep getting more responsibilities, more titles. So eventually I worked my way up from just doing album reviews and concert reviews to also doing interviews. And when you stick around for long enough, you start to get press releases like every hour, every minute, all the time. And people going, do you want to speak with this person? And when you get a couple of interviews under your belt, people go, oh, you've spoken with that person. What about this person? In other words, the same publicist gives you more of their clients. And then word spreads over time. And then before you know it, you're turning down 99% of what comes in.
Wow.
That's impressive.
That is impressive.
So you're shooing them away.
Yeah, it's not like I'm trying to sound like a big timer. It's just the kind of thing that anyone can really do what I do if they're willing to start at the bottom, pay their dues a little bit, and stick with it.
Okay, so you worked your way up as a trusted, I almost said informant, but that's not quite right. No, you just.
I mean, not far off, arguably informant, but yeah, sure.
Yeah, so just you report the facts straight from them, and that's pretty cool.
So, Darren, you're from Long Island. So, do you know any of the celebrities who are from Long Island as well? Such as, let's see, it wasn't Biz Markie. He was from Long Island,
yes.
Wasn't he? Did you ever meet him before he passed?
Nearly worked on a project with him about 15 years ago.
Nice.
Never got to meet him, but his manager at the time was trying to get some money up front for that project. Joan Jett lives on our block. I see her on the street, once every, I'd say, 18 months, you're like, oh, yeah, that's Joan Jett. And two members of Taking Back Sunday are in our town. You see one of them like once every 2 months. Long Island has a lot of celebrities, that's for sure.
And the what is it? The Long Island Medium, doesn't she live there as well? So did you ever run into her?
She's probably like an hour-ish away from here. That individual I have not run into, but I've seen DMC a couple of times, if that helps.
I was actually going to ask you about him because Daryl McDaniels, the other part of Run DMC, I saw the interview with him, at least one of them.
Oh, cool.
I don't know if you've done multiple. I really enjoyed it. I'm a old school hip hop fan. I'm a Beastie Boys guy and a bunch of others. So I have been looking through your site to ever see if you did talk to any of the Beastie Boys. I did not see that. Have I missed it?
Thank you very much for those kind words. Thank you for looking. No Beastie Boys. I think there's a photo of me and Mike D from a couple of years ago, which I could dig up. I saw him at a music festival in Delaware. But a weird coincidental tie. So I'm in this town called Long Beach, New York, and it's where Rick Rubin, the co-founder of Def Jam, is originally from.
Okay.
So the first Beastie Boys video was filmed in our town.
Nice.
And yeah, a lot of hip-hop history happened on Long Island, but you never want to say you're from Long Island. You want to say you're from New York City. Public Enemy is from a couple of towns over from here, and they filmed a music video in our town as well. But I think they said it was Atlanta for some reason in the music video. Yeah, stuff like that happened. And MF Doom is from this town. And Lil Peep was from this town. All this hip-hop stuff happened on Long Island, yet no one really wants to represent Long Island, if that makes sense.
It's East Coast, that's all. Just
They're all
East
from
Coast.
Atlanta or New York or anywhere else, but not there. That's funny.
What's your favorite type of interview to do? Is it artists or movie stars or musicians? Do you differentiate, or is it just kind of by the person?
Kind of by the person. If I can be a little inside baseball here, sometimes they give you interviews where you're kind of set up to fail because and the viewer or the listener never sees this, but there's a publicist on the line and the publicist might be typing notes at you. That could be happening. Or they go, okay, you have, instead of speaking to one person from the show for 20 to 30 minutes, you have them for 4 minutes. And it might be starting in 7 minutes. We'll let you know. So sometimes you do these things. I have one of them later this week for a show, and they go, you're going to speak to these 5 pairings of people each for 6 minutes. And you go, oh, that's not stressful at all.
It didn't even get started by the time it's over.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's hurry up and wait kind of stuff. And then if I compare that to an interview that I did on, I think it was Thursday or Friday with my old friend Ned. He's in this new HBO Max show called The Pit, and he was in the band Rooney. I've known Ned on and off for 15 years, and it's relaxed, and what do you need? That kind of a thing. That's the fun stuff to do when it's an old friend and you're catching up, or somebody you've interviewed a few times, rather than these rush job 5-minute only ask about the show with the publicist looking in.
Yeah. Here's a list of pre-approved questions that you can ask us.
Here's a list of pre-approved topics, but don't tell anyone that these are pre-approved topics.
Oh, Ben, edit that out.
I won't tell anybody we were on the phone 45 minutes before this interview started talking about all the sensitive things we can't ask about.
Yeah.
I assume there's some fatigue for the stars as well. Like some of them probably, you may come across them for 10, 15 minutes at a time, but they probably shotgun these and do 20 in a day or an hour or whatever. So they're answering the same questions all day.
You're not wrong. So a lot of my interviews start with me saying to the person, how's your day going, aside from answering the same questions over and over and over again? And that usually disarms them a little bit, and they go, oh, okay, this guy gets it.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's cool. I guess I'll take it back a step. What motivated the whole deal? Did you ever want to be a talk show host or a podcast host? Or you mentioned writing in the paper. Like what drove you to take that next step?
A few things. First thing, I always loved late night television growing up on Letterman and Conan and Craig Kilborn and Craig Ferguson and
Cheeky Monkeys.
Johnny Carson, arguably. What was that?
Yeah, you said Craig Ferguson, Cheeky Monkeys. That's what he said all the time. There's a Cleveland tie-in, too. Josh Robert Thompson did the voice of Jeffrey Peterson. He's a Cleveland guy, too. Jeffrey Peterson was the robot skeleton at the end.
Wow, cool. I'm glad to hear that. And I just loved late night television, and I think it definitely has lost a step in recent years since they tried to pander more towards like viral videos and YouTube kind of stuff rather than ongoing jokes and great segments and all that. But that was part of it. And then the other part of it is just watching things evolve over time. Like, as much as I enjoyed late night TV, I always read Rolling Stone as a kid. And these days, it's really hard to read Rolling Stone. You kind of, not only is the journalism so-so, but you kind of want that visual. And these days, you want the audio and or visual as much as possible with your interviews. So I kind of had to evolve like a lot of people did.
I see here on my list of things is you're huge. I would call you huge. I see a lot of T-shirts that you wear when you're doing the show and everything else. They seem to have that VH on there, that Van Halen bent. Would I be wrong if I say you're a huge Van Halen fan?
Well, I, for better and for worse, wrote a book about David Lee Roth, and I co-host a podcast that's Van Halen and Dave centric and all that. Are you both casual Dave and Van Halen fans or diehards?
I wouldn't say that I'm a diehard. I do. I have listened to Van Halen. I've listened to them over the years. And then also when they got, mixed in with some Two Live Crew back in the day and other stuff. So I'm well aware of their long history of being around and is it Diamond Dave? He's definitely a character, right? I don't know about Tom's knowledge of Van Halen.
No,
what say you, Tom?
I would put myself in the same boat. I am a diehard fan of certain bands, so I would say I wouldn't be quite there with Van Halen. Like, if you talk Mighty Boss Tones, I own every record on vinyl, CD, cassette, everything. All the T-shirts, all the everything. So I don't quite have the collection of Van Halen, so I'm not going diehard with them.
But the Boss Tones did do a Van Halen song.
Oh, yeah, they
did a cover,
yes.
That's for sure.
So I'm talking about love, right?
Yep. I'm a diehard fan of the ska cover of Van Halen. No, sorry.
well, I could talk a lot about ska because Long Island ska scene had a real thing going on. And then a lot of the people from that ska scene have kind of found success in other genres. Like, for example, do you know the singer-songwriter Jeff Rosenstock?
Not off the top of my head.
Jeff, he's pretty darn big. I'll just put it to you that way. And that was a band that I just used to go see every weekend. And a lot of those people, one or two of the guys from Taking Back Sunday were in ska bands out here. And the composer from a lot of film and TV projects, Dan Deacon, he was the singer in a ska band called Channel 59, but he doesn't want you to know that. And the drummer of that band, he produced a lot of podcasts. Tim, a lot of ska people just turned into career musicians.
Yep, that happens. We make it every now and then.
Who's the best ska band from your region? Is it Mustard Plug, or were they from
Mustard Plug's Michigan. Michigan. So in our region, I'm going to break a few rules with this one. They claim they're not ska, but they play on the upbeat and have horns now. So we have a band called Tropodelic that's pretty big. They got festivals built around them and everything. And they'll open for Badfish and do all kinds of stuff. And like the crowds will be there to see the opener, then they'll leave for the headliner once Tropodelic's done. So they're pretty good.
Nice.
We got a couple other ones, but our scene is come and go. It washes up, and then we rebuild, and then it's pretty sweet for a while.
It's like an ocean, Just comes up on the shore and then goes back out for a while.
Well, to show you my love for ska, because this is a sidebar topic. So I love Real Big Fish. That's one of the bands I've seen more than any other band, but not in the last 10 years. Just a lot of Real Big Fish shows. And the drummer for a bunch of years of Real Big Fish joined the band America. Do you guys know America, Ventura Highway, and Horse with No Name and all that?
Yes.
So the guy who plays drums in America was the drummer in Real Big Fish for 10 years. So I interviewed two of the three main guys from America a week or two ago, and I started asking them about Real Big Fish and Scott and all that, and go like, how did you know that he would be good for America given that he was in Real Big Fish? And it turned out that guy's son was friends with Ryland, who was in Real Big Fish.
Cool.
So he was on deck to join America.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Actual questions asked.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
All right, so now we got to circle back. Tell us about Van Halen.
Well,
don't lose us.
I think that Van Halen is one of the quintessential American rock bands of all time, because when you think about it, Beatles, Stones, Floyd, Zeppelin, British.
Sure.
If you're talking about the original new wave of heavy metal, most of those bands are British or German. Not a ton of great American bands. It's kind of Beach Boys, Kiss, Van Halen, Doors, just not a lot of them. And Van Halen didn't have a tremendous output, but what they did put out was generally high quality. And I think that Diamond Dave, David Lee Roth, whatever you want to call him, was the prototypical quintessential blonde frontman, that without him, there's no Vince Neil, there's no Bret Michaels, etc.
Sure.
And for better and for worse, he kind of set the template for that LA Sunset Strip look and feel and all that. There weren't a lot of smiley singers before Dave. There wasn't a lot of humor in music before Dave, but that doesn't mean that he was fantastic after 1991. So I'll admit that.
I did like some of his solo stuff. I mean, when he came out with was it Crazy from the Heat? Back in the day, that was one of those albums that I kept on loop all the time. I was always listening to Just a Gigolo and California Girls and all of those songs. And I remember the videos on Friday night videos. I'm not sure if you guys got that in your area, but Friday night videos was the thing to sit and watch. I know you're younger than me. You're kind of between Tom and I. Friday night videos was the thing to sit and watch. What's going to be on tonight? That's where I saw Thriller for the very first time. They were like, tonight's going to be the big night that, the Michael Jackson Thriller is going to be out. And I was like, okay, I'm there. I'm sitting in front of this television all night if it's what it takes. So, of course, it was the last thing they showed. But, I watched the whole show.
They had your attention.
Yeah, they did. They had me stuck in front of that TV. So
I get it. I get a lot of flack from Van Halen fan base people due to my age, because I'm younger. Even though I'm 42, about to be 43, that's younger than the majority of Van Halen fans. Because for you to have been affected by Jump or Panama when it came out in 84, 85, early MTV, you were probably 10 years old.
Sure.
Plus, or for you to have liked all the eye candy and Just a Gigolo and California Girls, because obviously it was catered towards teen boys, you had to be a certain age.
Sure.
So there's a guy I talked to who runs one of the main Van Halen sites that gets the exclusives, and I'll be talking about, oh man, I just discovered this thing on YouTube, and he'll go, I've had that on tape since 1996. Like real conversations that happen. And sorry I wasn't born earlier, but Van Halen, I love Van Halen, but they are killing their legacy more every year. Like Motley Crue has 80 times better online engagement and merchandising and branding than Van Halen. So as big as Van Halen was, it's not going to continue into the future if they keep doing what they're doing.
Sure. And that's one of those things I always thought about. I know, just to get back on one of the bands that I like is the Beastie Boys, how they, I know that they were kind of against having their music in commercials and advertising, which I can totally agree with. If you don't necessarily want your music to be peddling merchandise. That's fine. But the movie aspect of it kind of bothered me because I'm like, a younger generation will not learn about you if you're not in those types of things. Like with Metallica, what they did with what is it, Stranger Things, and how they allowed their music to be used in there. How many people learned about them? How many people found out about them? So that's what I think that's what you're saying is if you don't get yourself out there, your legacy fades away.
100%. And specific to the Beastie Boys, this really, really happened a couple of weeks ago and horrified me. A friend of my wife and I is dating somebody that's much younger, mid-20s gentleman. And that person, we were, small talking over dinner, first time I'm meeting him, asking about the music he likes, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, and what about the Beastie Boys? He said, Beastie Boys sounds like a boy band. And I was horrified. My wife and I still laugh about that. But if you think about that, why would a person that's 24, 25 years old think that No Sleep Till Brooklyn or Fight for Your Right to Party or Sabotage is cool? If they don't have the context of these guys were the first or among the first to combine hip hop and punk, or they were originally a hardcore band, or they were the Def Jam artist, or all that kind of stuff, or the Free Tibet kind of stuff they pioneered, or the samples of Paul's Boutique. If they don't have that context, you would just go, what are these whiny, nasally guys screaming about?
Sure. They used to lend their music to movies, and I had heard that if someone comes to them and says, "Hey, look, we have a spot in this movie that we want to put this song. We can't find anything else to go with it. We really want to use your music." They would allow it, but it was very hard to do for them. So I know that some artists feel as though their music should be more cherished, and I can appreciate that. But also, if you're not hitting those new audiences, like I saw a girl one day at my family and I camp, and she goes by, she's on a skateboard, and she's wearing a Beastie Boys shirt. And I said, "Excuse me," I said, "Where did you get that shirt?" She says, "Oh, just at the store. I got it online." I said, "Oh, nice." I said, "Do you know that band?" "No." I said, "Well, you should learn about them." I said, "Go online and look them up." She said, "Well, I just thought the shirt was cool." I go, "Well, that's great, but you should definitely know about them. I would like you to be able to name at least one of their songs."
Yeah,
and she says, "Oh, okay." And she went on. My daughter's like, "That was so creepy." I'm like, It's the principle of the matter. I don't know. Like I see people wearing Nirvana shirts that are like, 15.
Yeah.
I'm like, do you please tell me one song? Cause I'd like you to. I'm not going to down you for wearing it necessarily, but at least go do some research. Sublime shirt or whatever. I want you to know who is on your shirt and why.
You are having exact conversations that I have all the time, for better and for worse. And there's certain friends of mine that, because we don't have other people to talk about this kind of stuff with, that when this headline happens, an email chain that is not broken in about 6 years continues. And we talk a lot about bands that have great legacy management and bands that have terrible. And I think maybe, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong here, I think the best band legacy management of all time by a landslide is the band The Misfits. First, you have the teenagers wearing shirts that they don't know is a band. Second, they merchandise everything. The pop socket I just bought for my new phone is a Misfits one. They don't have a Van Halen one. Third, they did all of this without ever having a gold record or a charting single.
That's true.
And yet their reunion tours, they play arenas, and they sound terrible. They sound absolutely terrible, and they can continue to do arenas almost 10 years after they got back together. Is there a better legacy management thing than the Misfits?
I can't argue with that. Growing up, I love TV shows and everything. The theme song is what would always catch my eye. The Cheers theme song, iconic, everything. Sure. I love the Paltrocast song.
It's gold.
Oh,
it's gold.
You.
I love it.
It gets stuck in my head. That's as catchy as any David Lee Roth song. No, sorry. That's So where did that come from?
I can't take a ton of credit for that because the music is done by a gentleman named Steve Schiltz. He did a couple of albums on RCA as the lead singer of the band Longwave. Nowadays, he's in the band Blue October. Are you familiar with Blue October?
I've heard of them.
Big band. And he co-writes and plays lead guitar and all that kind of stuff. So it's his music and his voice. My wife jokingly contributed the lyrics or inspired that kind of stuff. So kudos to Melissa for that. But the song is registered as a Schiltz Paltrowitz composition through ASCAP.
Nice.
That's beautiful.
I do love that song.
Yeah.
I do get it stuck in my head, and every time when I'll hear it on the channel, and it catches my attention. It's like that. It's like that old, sounder that they would play right before something big was going to happen on TV, and you're like, you'll just be walking by, and it comes on, and like, oh, hey, it's about to start. You're ready.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm trying to think if it's online. One of Steve's friends really likes it, and he's a director. I think he cut a video, and again, I don't know if this is a private text message thing or an Instagram thing, but he cut a Kramer-like stepping into the room intro. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yes.
To that theme song? And Steve's a genius. He is one of my favorite singers and songwriters ever, and I was shocked that he'd be willing to engage doing a theme song for my show because he's a legit guy. He played in the band The Strokes. He's real, and he said, "Yeah, sure. What do you need?"
Nice.
And that's Steve Schiltz, one of the most pleasant people in rock and roll.
And did you approach him, or how did that collaboration start?
Steve became a friend 10-ish years ago when I was working on the management team for the band OK Go. They were premiering this video at this New York City event where there was only supposed to be 20 or 30 people there, but it was live streamed. And at a certain point in time, I think somebody goes, "Oh, this is Steve. He's in the band Longwave." And I go, "Oh, I know Longwave. I saw you guys with X, Y, and Z." And I'm, for better or for worse, one of those people that wants to keep the night going. Mm-hmm. I don't like to get home early. Uh-huh. So he and I went out drinking with another person or two, and 5 beers in, I think we were inventing new things. I think we came up with diet meat and all these dumb ideas. I'm pretty sure the next day he emailed me. I'd have to look to see if I'm remembering this correctly. I'm pretty sure I had an email from him the next day, subject line, diet meat. And he shared with me a Queensryche thing that was hilarious. That was just kind of embarrassing to the band Queensryche, and we think it's hilarious. And the meme sharing never stopped, and the snarky music news stuff never stopped. But he is just one of the nicest, most fun people to be in my life. And Steve, legitimately, it's Schiltz, not Schlitz like the beer, Schiltz, Schiltz. So he's in Blue October, and he helped score that movie about Anita Pallenberg, Keith Richards' ex-flame, that came out that did really well. There's Planet Fitness commercials that it was all him on the music. Sometimes you don't know it's Steve, but he's a real heavy hitter with music.
Nice. One thing that I do want to mention is that I did a little research out there, and there's some other podcasts out there besides the Paltrocast. There's one about unboxing stuff, and there's a lady that does it with you. You want to tell us a little bit about that one?
Yeah, the wife and I do a thing called the Paltrow Box. You remember how Inspector Gadget or Batman, every single tool that he had was a pun, get the Gadget Copter and all. So I just, as a joke, because no one could say my last name as a kid, Paltrowski, and you're like, there's no SKI. How did you get that? Do you hate Austrians? What are you doing here? But I just, as a joke, just started Paltrow blank, Paltrocast, Paltrow Box. And we unbox things because I was getting a lot of packages of things to cover. And occasionally a publicist would go, "Can you also show what it looks like?" At first, it's, no, I don't need to do that. I'm already giving you coverage. But I mentioned that to my wife one time in passing. She goes, "Oh, no, we could film it. We can unbox it." And I think we've only been posting it the last about 3 years, the videos of these kinds of things. And right now, I'm looking at about 20 things that have to be unboxed. And it's kind of a pain to do. But then once you actually put them out there, and you document the process of receiving all these cool things, you go, "Oh, that was fun. Send me more."
And these are all things that are sent to you in like promo packages. These are things you order. I saw one of them, and I have to go back to a question in just a moment, but I don't still want to forget it. But you had done a couple of things. So where do you get these items at?
Mostly publicists, the way that they offer interviews, they also go, "Would you like to write about this thing?" And you go, "Well, I can't write about it if I don't try it." And they go, "Okay, here's the tracking number." And you go, "Oh, that was easy."
Nice.
And 1 out of every 100 things that we unbox is something I forgot I ordered online. And I open it up and go, "Actually, that's an Old Navy thing I ordered. Oops. Well, we'll leave it in here because I believe in showing the imperfections."
There you go.
That's cool.
So the thing that I wanted to bring up was, and I knew nothing about this till I listened to the podcast. You're gonna have to forgive me for forgetting the name of the podcast, but there's a podcast you do with a gentleman, and I heard it online, and you guys were talking about a skincare product that David Lee Roth came out with that is some kind of, it's not real, it is real, nobody really knows, there's advertising for it, this, that, and the other thing. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about that podcast, and then you can tell everybody a little bit about what this enigma is.
Well, thank you for really diving in and paying attention to what I do or have done. And that was an episode of the DLR cast, which is about David Lee Roth stuff. Because David Lee Roth, there's a lot more to the Van Halen singer than just he put out an album, he toured. There's a lot of weird sidebars and hobbies and projects that he starts and abandons. Mm-hmm. And one of them, he started around 10 years ago. He came out with a tattoo skincare line called Ink the Original. And he started appearing a couple of years later, right before COVID, like 2018 maybe. He started doing all these interviews out of nowhere. He was on Mark Maron, Joe Rogan, Vulture, just 5 to 10 interviews out of nowhere. And then he started talking about Ink the Original. And then a month or two later, he was not doing interviews. You couldn't order the products anywhere. It never grew anywhere. It never went anywhere. And I just kind of wanted to get to the bottom of why, how, what happened here? Exactly. What's the deal? But when I was putting out my book about David Lee Roth, one of the publicists who sends me stuff to unbox all the time, he goes, "Cool that you wrote a book about Dave. You know that I worked on Ink the Original, right?"
Wow.
I went, No, I know that you work on marketing campaigns, but you failed to mention that you worked with David Lee Roth. And he told me the story of the whole thing. And he didn't know if the product ever actually came out the way that things happened over there, because really weird NDAs get signed, and they said, "Okay, you're going to have a meeting at Dave's house, and you need to dress this way and park your car here, and a van is going to pick you up at this time in this shopping center." Like, really bizarre kind of stuff.
All this over a skincare product. That's kind of interesting.
Oh, yeah, for a skincare product. So I put it out there in an episode that it never came out. And then different listeners of the show were going, "You idiot, it did come out. I bought it." And then I found online where it was sold but listed as sold out, what trademarks Dave was still paying for related to it. So it's just this bonkers thing. He put millions of dollars into this thing and never promoted it.
It's insane. That's hilarious.
And that's not the only Dave thing he put millions of dollars into and then really didn't promote or care about.
Well, maybe he just gets bored with it after a while. You know, when you've got more money than you know what to do with, I guess that happens sometimes.
Yeah. There's this also. I wouldn't know either, but he also around that time put out this digital comic book that nobody knows is out there called the Roth Project. This really ambitious project, and he did 0 interviews to promote it.
No Paltrocast at that time?
I got my Dave interview in 2003, which is part of my book. And when I was writing the book, I reached out to his team many times to go, hey, can Dave talk to me? I'll give creative control. I'll let him read the book. I'll let him tell me what's wrong. It's through his perspective. Not even a no, just nothing. So anything I get related to Dave is from people who were in his band or Warner Music. It's like everybody but Dave will talk to me.
Wow. He's over it. He's just over it.
He was over it before it began.
Exactly.
That's interesting. You definitely did your homework. There's no doubt about that.
I try.
So it's obvious Ben did his homework today. I'll admit I just watched the Paltrocast. That's a homework I did today.
So I did some deep diving because I know that he's a PI or was a PI, and I know that if I don't do my homework, he's going to be like, these guys, they stink. We don't want to be like that. We want to be like the Paltrocast. He asks people stuff on there that they're like, I don't even remember that. And he's like, he'll talk like 10 minutes to them, and they're like, oh, you know what? I was there.
Yeah, there's no record of that. Shut up. No.
No, you guys are great. Really did your homework and aren't asking me the same things that people ask me over and over and over again. And I was taping an interview with a wrestler like an hour ago, and I've interviewed a lot of professional wrestlers. And if you really want to bore a wrestler to tears, you ask them who their favorite wrestler was growing up, why they wanted to become a wrestler, who trained them, what match is coming up next for you. You will bore them to tears. And so I try and ask them about life outside of wrestling, not in a, hey, is it fake? Not that kind of stuff, but what's going on with traveling these days? Do you have a hotel group that you're loyal to, or a chain that you try to go to? Do you have an energy drink? How do you manage to do this, and this? What are your career goals? Do you have acting plans? You know, who in the locker room also listens to metal? I try and do that stuff because I don't want to just be an Entertainment Tonight kind of junket, you know?
Well, there's got to be more honesty there, too. You're getting to know them on a deeper level than most of the superficial questions.
As best as I can. There's only one wrestler who hated my guts for me trying to do that. And then usually wrestlers, they're really just like comedians in terms of the demeanor and kind of almost being the opposite of who they are on camera.
That's interesting. Are you saying it's all fake? No.
The injuries are not fake. It's very interesting when you think about that wrestling is one of the longest standing forms of entertainment ever. And it's kind of a mix of improv, bad community theater, action movie stunts, and just live entertainment and getting a reaction. When you think about it that way, wrestling just doesn't sound stupid to the average person.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. I was just kidding with that because anytime you get the reaction, as you mentioned, and how many other people are proficient in all those different ways and can keep it fresh day to day, you know, there's a lot of work that goes into it, real or not. I wasn't allowed to watch it when I graduated 6th grade, so I everything I know about wrestling I learned from Ben here.
So much of wrestling and wrestlers is related to Ohio. Are you kind of aware of that?
No, I'm learning more from you. Yeah.
I do know that I went to the Canton Civic Center back in 1993 it must have been 1994 to see wrestling. And I was such a geek when I saw George the Animal Steele there in a suit. He was not in character, sitting in the front down by me and my college roommate there. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm like, do you know who that is? He's like, a bald guy? I go, no, that's George the Animal Steele. I said, his tongue is usually green. He's eating the turnbuckle. He's doing all kinds of stuff. I said, and he's sitting like 10 rows in front of us down there. I said, wow, that's amazing. And then afterwards, we actually followed him out, and he was getting into his limousine and everything. And everybody's like, George, George, George. And he just like waves like, yeah, don't call me that. And he gets in his limousine and drives off. But that was like a highlight. That was the only wrestling event that I've ever been to. Like I said, it was at the Canton Civic Center, a small venue, and all these guys are there. It was pretty cool. And I was watching the night Hulk Hogan was taken off on a stretcher. I don't know if you ever saw that on Saturday night main event.
Sure.
And so, I was like, oh my gosh, I've been watching this since I was a kid. And this guy I've seen on TV a million times. And now he's in the flesh right here. And that was kind of cool to me. I'm kind of a geek in that way. I'm like, oh, that's really neat.
Well, with George the Animal Steele, fascinating guy. And by that, I mean, wrestling these days, you wrestle year round as long as you're healthy. And George the Animal Steele was a high school football coach and teacher in Michigan. And so he was only wrestling for WWF in the summer. So he was Jim Myers, and he was a teacher, and the students weren't supposed to know that he was a teacher. And then he'd come around for the WWF payday and do WrestleMania and all that kind of stuff in the summer, and then go back to teaching. Did you know that?
No, I did not know that. That is an amazing story.
Yeah, a lot of wrestlers, you find out, were kind of savvy to, hey, I'm not getting health insurance or benefits. I should do other stuff. And one of them, for example, is Terry Funk, who wrestled into his 70s, only died within the last few years. But he kind of realized, if I wrestle these months of the year, and then these months of the year, I'll try and get stunt work or extra work in LA to go towards my SAG card or my benefits. That's what they were doing. I think Roddy Piper was that way too. So there's this interesting carny nature to wrestling. And that stuff I can never get enough of. The matches, I'm usually pretty bored. But when you learn the brilliance behind and the carny-esque things that are going on with a lot of these performers, you go, oh my God, these are the smartest people that everyone is just pegging as dumb.
It's amazing that I like how you say that carny-esque. That kind of does explain it. Like, you're like, how do you explain this to somebody? That totally has that feel.
I'll pack it up and go. Do it in the next time. That makes perfect sense.
And bringing it full circle here, I mean, with hip hop, I think it's a similar deal where most of the rappers are super intelligent and are not really rapping about what their life is like. And so many mainstream rappers eventually cross over into acting, and they can all act. They're all amazing actors. Why? Because the rap persona is a character. And I think it's a similar deal with, why are so many wrestlers good actors? Because they're acting. And why are so many comedians amazing when they do a dramatic role? Because it's a persona also. It's just the ska people who can't act.
I've known trombone players that couldn't play and just move the slide and fake it. That's what I grew up playing, so they always aggravated me. Like, just get off the field already.
Nice.
I want to tell everybody that if you want to check out the Paltrocast, which is a great view and listen, there's always a new episode each week here on Brunswick Area Television. It airs on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. and Thursdays at 1 a.m. and 7 a.m. And so if you're out there and you're driving around on, some highway somewhere and you couldn't get that information and you want to pull over, or you can always listen to this again, and maybe you're waiting to get over into a Tim Hortons in Canada or something. You never know. So Wednesdays at 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. and Thursdays at 1 a.m. and 7 a.m. right here on Brunswick Area Television. You can also catch them on bat.vibit.com. They air at those times during the live stream, or you can catch them in the playbacks right there. What's on the horizon for the Paltrocast? Anybody that you have coming up that you're really excited about?
It comes and goes because there's days when I book way too many interviews. I have another 2 today, 5 or 6 tomorrow, 5 or 6 on Wednesday. I don't know why I do this. So thankfully that is there to keep that content running. But in the meantime, expect comedians, musicians, rappers, actors, athletes, etc. And if there's anybody I should be getting that the show doesn't have, reach out to me. Let me know. I'm open to ideas.
How can we get in touch with you? Where do we send the fan mail, if you will?
There's a form if you go to Paltrocast.com. There's the stuff on YouTube. I'm pretty easy to find. Just put Darren Paltrowitz in the Google machine, and you could pretty much figure out the email right there.
All right. That's awesome. I know we appreciate having you on. I'm just curious, how'd you come across us? Because you reached out to us, didn't you, to get the show on?
Because I know who's happening, and clearly you guys are happening, right? I investigated, and I succeeded.
Well, we're happening that much more because you're on the channel, so we appreciate it.
Mutual Appreciation Society, all seriousness, thank you for being so loyal to my show, showing it, exposing it to the great people of Brunswick, and looking forward to many more episodes to come.
And then we also have to thank Kim because she's his local sponsor. So
That's
Kim
right.
locally sponsors your show because you're outside the area, but that doesn't mean anything. We did find somebody. So whether you want to do a show about cooking out there or you want to do, a show about French boutiques or whatever you want to do, you can give us a call, 330-220-1726, and you can do your own TV show here. Or you can just tell us, hey, we like watching the channel, we like watching the shows, and you can always reach out to Darren and let him know that you're listening to his show and watching it and enjoying it as well.
I agree. So, Darren, thank you for being part of Meet the Producers today.
As Diamond David Lee Roth himself would say, nothing but yeah.
Nice.
Awesome. That'll do it for this episode of Meet the Producers. We want to thank Darren Paltrowitz for joining us on this show and creating and submitting, the Paltrocast, because that's awesome. Bad Government programs are produced by Corinne Kirk, Tom Kepler, and Ben Staunton. You can find this and other programs, as well as a live stream on our on-demand website, bat.vibit.com. Feel free to reach out, offer a suggestion, or get involved. Thanks for tuning in.